Thank you, everyone. I think we are ready to begin after a long day and a half. And probably this afternoon in the room, we have people who are interested in Latin America, have lived in Latin America, or work daily in Latin America. And, but just in case some of you aren't, I would like to introduce with a brief summary of how we're seeing the region and the challenges that the Latin American markets pose for the development of our profession. It will be a very brief introduction because I think that we have a wonderful panel who you came to listen to. I'll start from closer to farthest. Francisco Paco, a friend of us, Paco Ríos is the manager director of corporate affairs and communications from Kellogg in Mexico. Antonieta Lopez is the VP of corporate affairs of Organización Cisneros, an organization mostly known because its activity in media, but also a large investor in real estate and other activities, and very recently in digital business and everything that has to do with e-business in the region. And José Antonio Llorente, the founding partner and president of Llorente Cuenca, therefore my boss, and who was supposed to get the easiest questions of the panel, but since there are two clients with him, I'm afraid he's not going to be that lucky. Let's begin then. When we think of Latin America, first of all, we always have the same discussion. Is it valid to consider the region as a whole, or the countries are so different and have so many different issues that we should look at one by one? What is true is that for a long time, the country has been better known for its social and environmental conflicts, particularly important in the development of activities like mining, gas, and oil. Also because of human rights and security issues, while safety and democracy has improved in the region greatly, there are still important challenges in many of our countries. Unfortunately, in the last decade or so, we have seen political developments not so easy to deal with for private companies, like the government and the political environment in Argentina, Venezuela, Ecuador. Also, our democracies are still young. Corruption and weak institutions are also in the way of business development for many multinationals, specifically American companies with very strict ethical standards who have to deal with environments where those standards may not be the same. And a very different media consumption pattern. It is true, and we will talk about that a little bit more later, that internet access has grown very rapidly. But it is also true that in Latin America, as opposed to Europe and the US, print media is growing, for instance, and is in many countries stronger than ever. So that communication strategies need to be adapted to that as well. And of course, we are in a region where, despite the economic growth, poverty is still high, and the social gaps that creates is still important. We are, as you know, throughout the whole region, and the good news is that all the countries where we operate in Latin America have seen a wonderful growth in the past years, even with issues like inflation in Argentina or the difficult situation in Brazil in the past months. The numbers are quite optimistic, and that, of course, has impacted the population. This is a report from the World Bank, where you can see how there is really a growing middle class in Latin America, something that was quite exceptional before and could probably be found mostly in countries like Argentina and Chile, is now emerging in other countries like Peru, like Colombia. But still, as you will see in the same graph, the poor population is still very high. It has gone down from 45% to 28 or 29% in the region, but it's still a huge number. And something that I would like to ask the panel as well is if that growth of the middle class is something that we can take for granted, or if it's still a very vulnerable growth and we are still in a weaker position that we would think for the development of industries, of retail, of many economical activities. On top of that, that economic development and that arise of a middle class hasn't gone together with a higher trust in private investment. Despite the private investment being the main source of growth in Latin America, as you will see, the trust in the companies have not improved. It looked a bit better at the beginning of the 2000s, but now it seems that it's stable in those 38% of the population who say they trust in businesses and private companies. And on top of that, there was a time when us in Latin America were probably too busy with our political instability, or we were too busy with the ups and downs of the economy, la crisis del tequila, and so on. And we thought that those regulatory or consumer trends impacting business in the US or Europe were too far and weren't going to reach us. And today, what we are seeing is that they are not only close, but they are absolutely in contact. And as you will see here, how the Mexican president is congratulated by former Mayor Bloomberg on his initiative to tax sugar drinks. Like I said before, internet access is growing. It's around 70% in Latin America now. But still, old media are also growing with very different characteristics than what you're probably used to see in the US. We see the popular newspapers being the source of this growth, but also, and Antonieta will tell us more about that in terms of how TV patterns are interacting with social media and so on. So we have a civil society that is more empowered than ever. The protests in Brazil, and I think there will be more about that later on this afternoon in a different session, they are only proof of how this new population of Latin America is fighting for its rights, is wanting to be heard. But it's also a demonstration on how even those politicians who arrive to power with the most populist agenda aren't being able to respond to the demands of those societies. And the challenge and the questions that I have for our panel today is, what are you doing, what are we doing, and how can we do it better in order to engage with these new and emerging stakeholders in Latin America? So if it's okay with you, I'd like to start with the first round of your general impressions on these issues. And Paco, if you want to begin, how is Kellogg approaching this new panorama in the region, and particularly in Mexico, where you operate?
Sure. Well, thank you for the opportunity of being here. I think there are a bunch of things that are happening. And as you were mentioning at the beginning of this session, Latin America, it's hardly to be considered as one. It has many different, I would say in a good way, but monsters that you need to handle. You have Brazil, you have Mexico, you have Colombia growing big time, you have Peru as a huge opportunity, business opportunity, you have different situations happening in Argentina, in Bolivia, in Venezuela. I mean, you have, I wouldn't say only challenges. I think you have a huge opportunity to grow your business. If you compare what is happening, as you were mentioning also, in Latin America, it's growing. It's an emerging market. You can consider, I don't know, 7, 8 emerging markets that are growing more than many countries in Asia, many countries in Europe, or some other parts of the world. For Kellogg, it's a huge opportunity. I think if you consider, I will give you a couple facts. Some mature markets that we consider mature markets of cereal consumption, like UK, a regular consumer eats around 7 kilos per capita. 7 kilos per year. Mm-hmm. In Mexico, which is our biggest business in Latin America, consumes about 1 kilo. So there are many, many opportunities for our businesses, for the food industry, or actually for and synergies between local companies and international companies. So probably, again, it's a huge opportunity more than a risk or challenge.
Thank you. And Antonieta, in your business model, how is this new panorama impacting?
Well, I think that following Lisa's comments and what we were talking here today, definitely Latin America, it could be kind of una montaña rusa.
Roller coaster.
Growing, but it's not. I think that the growth in Latin America, it's double of the advanced economies. I think the growth in Latin America, it's about 4%, GDP of 4, compared with 2 of the advanced economies. So that's a great opportunity. And what really is a big challenge? We have a big growing middle class. It's a middle class that's spending. It's a middle class that likes, and we know that they like to spend in entertainment, health, and education. Those are the 3 main areas where these newcomers are spending their money. And the Cisneros group it's a group that has been in Latin America for the last 80 years. And our business is media and entertainment. It's TV, it's a screen, it's a traditional TV. And what are we doing in front of this, what Luisa said, the internet growing with a 42% growth? Well, we're taking advantage of technology. We're taking advantage of what digital revolution it's all about. And how are we doing this? We started about 3-4 years ago with having a 360 strategy for our screen. What does that mean? Every telenovela, every talk show, every big event in TV has a digital director. That digital director has a responsibility of defining the digital extensions for that telenovela in a Twitter, YouTube, whatever venue there is. And that's the way that we have just started a very interesting conversation, interaction. Maybe I can put you a very, very quick example. 2 years ago, we had an extreme success with a telenovela named Eva Luna. If you live here in Miami, maybe we have our studios here, and it was produced here in Miami. And we had all this 360 strategy. We were on the top of the list of the main TV prime, CBS, ABC, NBC for the last day. And we had 9 million viewers. And of those 9 million viewers, I think more than 70% were young people. So that's the way that we really engage with this generation, that it's, while the parents maybe are looking at the screen, they're looking at their iPad, they're looking at their mobile device, and they're following us day to day, chapter by chapter, in the different platforms and devices.
So a format that seems old, as the
It's a
soap opera has a new life.
And I have to tell you something. I don't know if you saw TV on Saturday, but we won Venezuela. We have the 7th crown for Miss Universe. And the Cisneros group bought that franchise 40 years ago. And that's the Organización Mi Venezuela. And the beauty of that is that we have a screen that we have in Univision. And years ago, it was only one day of an event that all Latin America, everyone saw that. But since this year, we're strengthening our brand. And we have a reality show with this multi-platform devices with 15 episodes. We have an interactive gala where all of the people through the devices, they can vote for their winner. And then we have the big event. For this reality show, and that's something interesting business-wise, we partnered with Sony Entertainment and with Univision. Sony Entertainment for all Latin America, and Univision for the US. So you had this brand, it's a whole year business, and it's a big business. You see the sponsors we have for those, they really are fighting to have that brand. Well, I think I talked more than I had the time for doing it, but it's really very enthusiastic to be really being able to match all this different traditional and new
technologies
and new platforms.
José Antonio, are you seeing the same thing in terms of corporate communication and how our clients are engaging throughout the region compared to European trends or American trends?
Yes, but my view is that it is very similar. I hear Francisco at the beginning, I agree with him that Latin America is highly diverse and very different from one point from other. I was 2 weeks ago in Guatemala. I didn't know very much the country, but I realized that they have 17 different languages in Guatemala, local languages. But on the other side, I think Latin America is very similar too. And I hope this don't sound contradictory. I mean, there are many differences, but there are many similarities. And from traveling one place to other, I like to see both, no? The similarities and the differences. But engaging, which is the topic of this round table, I think it has to be with connecting with people. And connecting with people in the life of today is not saying something interesting one day. It's not defining a nice sentence to be repeated frequently. It has to be with living the life of the people on a constant basis. I like the example that our friend talked about the Miss Venezuela and how you have been taking advantage of this. To take advantage, to engage with audiences today, it's a question of introduce yourself in the life of the people every day. If you think about Latin America, I think it's also connected with the aspirations and the challenges of the Latin American people. And we are seeing big changes, big threats, big challenges ahead of us, because I see populations in general terms in Latin America that are expecting for a better life, expecting for better status, standard of life. There is emerging middle class, but this emerging class D or C that are incorporated to the consumption. They want to live better, and they are requesting their governments and their politicians for providing this, not just in their political speech at the time of the election, but on the day-to-day. How is the health system in my country? How is the education system in my country? How is the transportation system in my city? And so many things that are related with this, no? So for me, engage is not, again, a question of finding a nice way of saying something sympathetic to the people. Is living the life with the people. And probably in terms of channels, I would say something that it is not new, but it has to be said, no? Engaging in the society of today has to be with the new media, with the online, with the digital, with the social media, whatever you would like to call. I mean, it's a new and realistic way of being there.
I think we are going to have a very interesting political year in the region, and online is going to play a big role in elections. It's already playing a big role in Colombia, for instance, for elections. But I wanted to go back to politics and governments, particularly to ask Paco about the regulatory environment and about those trends and if the strategies that Kellogg may be using in some other markets to address those changes in the regulatory environment are the same or similar to the ones you're applying in Mexico, or is there anything specific to be bear in mind regarding that?
Well, in new laws, new regulations, it's been very complex. This year, the last 6 months, we have countries like Chile, we have countries like Peru, like Ecuador now, Mexico, just as you were showing in one of the slides, just approved or voted in favor of a special tax for food and for soft drinks. One of the very tough things that we see every day is that our regulators, our authorities are traveling around the world all the time. So they bring a copy of whatever is happening in Europe, in Brussels, or whatever is happening in Australia, or whatever is happening in China. They bring a copy of that regulation, they translate it, and they try very quickly to implement. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, there is not much of discussion, analysis, scientific data or research that comes that supports that type of law. Just to give you an example, and obviously I won't mention the country, but in the past years we have seen regulations trying to label GMO-free or GMO products, general modified products, ingredients. And the country didn't even have that laboratories to make that analysis. Mm-hmm. So this is just, I'm exaggerating an example, but that's the type of things that we are going through in our countries. On the other side, you have very intelligent, very smart regulators in some of our countries or opposition sides that you can talk, you can go directly, express your opinion, share scientific data that help us defend our products. Obviously, there are a lot of myths around sugar, around GMOs is obviously mm-hmm. one other. Fat, obesity, stuff like that. So I will tell you that we have both sides of the story. We have people that are very radical, and we have people that really are willing to do the best for the community, and they are receiving us well as part of the answer. For example, in our case as a food company, to obesity or against obesity. I mean, the industry is part of the solution, not the cause mm-hmm. of it.
Antonieta, you think maybe corporate social responsibility strategies and engaging with communities and can lead to a better environment for businesses and dealing with local authorities?
That's a very interesting question, and following what Francisco no?
Yes.
was saying is that, well, we are, as a global company, we have to deal with different regulatory procedures in different countries. And I want to put an example. We have our newly created division, the Cisneros Real Estate. It has its headquarters here in Miami. And we work very closely with one of our most important and ambitious projects in the Caribbean. That's Tropicalia. It's a high-end, luxurious development, sustainable, low impact. And where social responsibility came before the initiation of the project. In Cisneros, corporate responsibility is one of the business strategies. There's no business that starts without having in place the corporate social responsibility. Tropicalia is in the eastern part of the island. It's kind of a very remote, it was very isolated region, and it had a very small town, very extremely poor, named Miches. It's a beautiful town, but extremely poor. Well, we started working there 5 years ago with going to the big necessities of that little town. It was education, it was helping them with health, and it was microfinancing. We just start teaching them. And that's 5 years before the project starts. So what are we aiming? We're going to give sustainability to the project, and we want to have that population to be sustainable in itself. So it's kind of an inner strategy, the way we manage and we see social responsibility. And for each of our different countries, each of our different companies, we have kind of a tailor-made program that has a lot to do with the core business of the program. For example, in Venezuela, we have an open TV channel, Venevisión, and we have developed a very interesting program where our talent, the anchors of the Canal for Information, they have a campaign of values and personal growth. And then people engage, as you say, because it's the person, it's the actor in the telenovela. It's the news, the anchor woman who's reading the news every night. And they're the one that are transmitting the messages through examples of real life. That's more or less what our corporate responsibility strategy is.
José Antonio Antonieta was saying 5 years of community relations and building the trust and helping the development of the people there in the area before setting the first stone of the real estate development. Is it the only way to do business in Latin America? Does growing in Latin America take that long? Or now that we see this land of opportunity where everybody is planning to get?
I think it's a worldwide trend, no? And frankly, looking at the world of today and what we can anticipate of the world of the future, it's a very good time for being a communicator or being a communicator consultancy or working on communications, no? Because I think the businesses are realizing that the challenges are not just produce a good product and put in the market at the right price. Francisco mentioned a big case, a big problem for the food, beverage industry in Mexico, but I think it's a worldwide problem, no? That the industry is affording. And I think it's industry is affording now, probably a little bit late, because it was a trend that should be anticipated. And in the world of today and in the world of tomorrow, trends are not issues that you could be dealing with 2 or 3 important people and problem is over. Because even the politicians has a lot of pressure from public on legislate on specific actions. And as Antonieta mentioned, establishing an idea in the public opinion, engaging with the key stakeholders in our community is a midterm process. And it's not a question of coming one day with one good idea. It's a question of establishing this in the midterm. So now industry is facing the obesity issue, which has been very well put in the public opinion terms by regulators and organizations that are pursuing these objectives. And there are other ways of looking at the problem, health way of life, but they have choose obesity as the right focus, no? But this is fighting against this or creating among the public opinion a new idea about the problem. It's a question of time. It's a question of investment, and it's a question of midterm. And unfortunately, or fortunately, because we live also from problems, industry is defensive. They wait until the problem is really in front of them to take action. in general terms. Of course, there are exceptions. You mentioned one.
We
very
don't want
nice
to
one.
lose clients today, José Antonio.
But they have to invest, and invest without short-term results is not what Wall Street or Bovespa or is awarding, no?
Besides your current position and companies, is that something that you're seeing changing the a more continuous effort to build corporate reputation in Latin America? I was surprised yesterday when I heard someone said that he saw our profession as moving towards a more project-based, a more assignment-based discipline, and that to me contradicts this idea of building trust and generating engagement in a sustainable way. Which way do you think corporations are going in the region, and how are your companies looking at the area?
No, of course. I think the consumer has evolved as much as the industry or as the categories. We have consumers that are asking about what are we doing if we have transportation that is eco-friendly. Moms asking if our packages is recyclable. I mean, just two quick examples, but yes, of course, there is a huge sense of healthy, of a huge sense of what is good for the community. No, of course. I mean, we are working very closely with different associations that are against hunger, different associations that are against poverty, education. We work very closely also with some of the community developments or these associations that are making some studies in rural communities where the whole community is obese. So it's stuff like that that are moving the needle of where to put our investments and what to talk about. I mean, our dialogue with our employees, with regulators, with consumers, with stakeholders, with key opinion leaders, sometimes it's the same. So we need to evolve in many ways. One of them is our communication. Obviously, we need to be more open and share all the good things that we do, and sometimes talk also about the opportunity areas that we have. We are renovating our products, changing the way the formulation of these products to be more in the way our consumers need them. Their habits are changing, so our products need to change. We are also developing new innovation, which again goes in the same path that our consumers wanted. So no, sustainability, corporate reputation, communication, I think it's something that is changing the strategy of the business, not only as a nice to have thing as it was some years ago.
I think Cisneros is a good example also of how you're handling corporate reputation from a family-owned business with a very low profile a few years ago to a different strategy now.
Francisco's just comments, and we're in the same page. But talking about reputation, it's Cisneros is a family business, 80 years, and the legacy was transferred now to the third generation. We're based here in Miami now, not Venezuela. And it's the third daughter of Gustavo Cisneros, Adriana Cisneros. And I was talking to Luisa before the session, the way this transition was, it was very well programmed, a very, very systematic planification of the different positions that she had to go through before being the CEO. And I think that all of that has a lot to do with corporate reputation. It has a lot to do with values, how those values that were there when the company was founded and it has transcended 80 years, how do this new generation, this new leadership adapts and changes and has a new vision. But all of this would, at the end of the day, it's on behalf of the reputation of what the group is and about each of the different companies that conform the group.
Has the conversation with CEOs in the region changed in that sense since we arrived in Latin America in '98, or is Cisneros an exception?
No, I think it has changed. And coming back to your point, to your question to Francisco, this is an industry. This is a question of being project by project. I radically think it is not. I'm in an industry that is. I see it's in the mid and the long term. Reputation, as Antonieta mentioned, is not a question of. It's not an issue to go project by project. It's an issue to have a clear pathway, a strategy, and develop constantly. And I don't see clients looking for project by project, except if they don't feel comfortable with the solutions they have. I've been working for 25, 30 years for some of our clients. I don't know if we have a contract or 20 contracts or 13 projects. All I know is that client gets what they want, that as time goes by, our knowledge of the industry and the client needs and the personality of the brands and the issues affecting the company is more important, more relevant, so we could give the client more value added to the problem. So I don't see my industry being this short-term oriented. On the contrary, I see that deep relationship based on, of course, on satisfactory and balanced situation for both parts is the good right. And I see that the CEOs, the CEOs I met and the CEOs I talked to are more on this dilemma. Even they are heavily affected by the short term, but they need to build organization on the midterm. Yesterday, Martin Sorrell said, a marketing manager, the average
the life of a CMO is 2 years.
The CEO 4 years. But looking the problem from the outside of the firm, the consultancy could provide more stability in the midterm.
Can I tell something to Francisco? You know, you could be our client. because we have this 360 approach that we can offer you, all of a platform to get to every audience you want. You can choose if it's a young audience, whatever you want. We're here in Miami, so we're corporate, so we can meet. Because that's some of the things that have been that's our new CEO she's very innovative. And that's, you know, in a way that really it benefits us because we get to our audiences with this 360. But on the other hand, we're offering our clients a completely multi-platform, so we can have a meeting.
I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes immediately.
Before you close the deal, I'm going to try to make. I see you are most in agreement in everything. Do you also agree on the differences between being a Latina company or being a multinational not being relevant anymore? When I arrived to Latin America in 2002, there was still a lot of value in a corporate brand being local, in being Peruvian in Peru, being Colombian in Colombia, Venezuelan in Venezuela. Is that still the case? The multinationals like Kellogg have a harder work to do, or not anymore?
No, well, I mean, I will tell you something that we have learned big time in the regulatory part, in the communication part piece. The local companies run the show many times. It's something very, very important because We have, I don't know, global, well-recognized brands, characters, but the local consumer likes their local products. So I think there's a bunch of opportunities to take there. It could be a win-win relationship between local brands and global brands, between distribution opportunities, between production opportunities, co-manufacturer opportunities. We have great, 2 or 3 great companies that we work very closely in Colombia, in Venezuela, in Brazil, where we are doing amazing things. And probably being there alone, it will take us years to go into the shelf. Or
Local
to go
partnerships
into
are fundamental for your
Yep,
business?
Yep. So, no, I wouldn't.
Well, maybe multilatinas is very interesting because sometimes they have their own business strategy and they're aggressive and they get in those niche where the multinationals, depending on the economic situation, maybe are more cautious. And even they're moving abroad, they're moving more from the frontiers out and abroad. It's very interesting, and I think that...
And very fast.
Very fast, they're very flexible. So it's a very interesting combination when they can work together with a multinational, or they can go by their own, with, growing where the other ones are cautious. So maybe it's interesting.
And being very admired in the countries where they are from, but also in the countries where they arrive. José Antonio, can you make some final comments about that? We are running out of time. After José Antonio, do we have time for questions? No, I'm sorry. Sorry. So your time to close.
But the challenge was being contradictory, and I don't find a way of saying something against what I've heard. No, on the contrary, I think that, Latin America is very local. Success has to be with being local and connect with the local issues and localities of each brand, issue, corporation, or whatever. And it has been our experience. I mean, we are now a large organization in Latin America, but it's by being a good local organization in each of the markets we operate.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.